Welcome to this first video in a whole series of demonstration videos of the Aspire project. In this first video, I'll introduce you to the overall project goals. In a nutshell, Aspire is a project driven by three companies. Nagra is a world leader in conditional access systems and DRM solutions. SafeNet is a world leader in software licensing solutions and solutions to monetize your software. Gemalto is a world leader, amongst others, in smart cards. To protect critical assets, these companies to a large extent rely on hardware-based security. However, in today's world where there is a zoo of mobile devices, pure hardware-based solutions are not very convenient. So in this project, we want to build a software protection tool flow that can protect software almost as good as hardware can do. And so we want this software protection toolchain to be capable of protecting the use cases of the three companies. These use cases are embedded purely in software, and so all the assets that need to be protected are embedded in the software. With our software protection tool flow, we want to protect them, transform the software such that confidentiality, integrity, and other security requirements are met. And to do so, we want to combine a bunch of different protection techniques. These are man-at-the-end protections. We want to hide critical values such as keys. We want to obfuscate algorithms and make them inaccessible. We want to make sure that attackers cannot tamper with the code, and so we integrate anti-tampering solutions. We also want to exploit the fact that these use cases are typically connected the whole time and that we can build on trusted servers to remotely attestate the integrity of the software. And we want to use different forms of renewability with which we want to update the protections, diversify the way the protections are applied, and enable the continuous update of assets and the way the assets are encoded and protected such that attackers have a very small window of opportunity. Now, with these protections, we want to mitigate man-at-the-end attacks. So the scenarios in which we are interested is that people download software from a content provider or a software provider or a service provider. They download that software from the cloud onto their device. In this scenario, the problem is that from the perspective of the vendor or the provider, the user of the app cannot be trusted. And the reason is, of course, that some users will take the application into their lab where they have all kinds of facilities like developer boards and hardware debuggers and scopes to look for side channels and then software analysis tools, and they will use those to attack the software. So it's this environment where basically attackers have white box access to the software that we want to protect against. We acknowledge upfront that in this type of environment you cannot provide full protection because the attackers have white box access. So we reason about attacks with an economic model that looks like this. On the x-axis you have time, and on the y-axis you have money per day. And the origin here is the day when the software is launched. From then on, attackers get their hands on it, and they will first start with engineering an attack. And so they will invest money in identifying the attack vector, and then once they have found one, in engineering an attack that they can scale up to actually attack instances of the software running on end users' devices. So at some point they launch the attack and they start making a profit. They start to exploit their attack. Of course, after some time, the profit goes down. For example, games, they only make a profit in the first couple of months or even weeks after they've been released. Now, from an attacker's perspective, his attack is worthwhile if the blue area here, the amount of profit he makes over a certain period of time, exceeds the investment he had to make in engineering and scaling up the attack. With the protections, we try to alter these shapes. For example, with some protections, you can try to increase the effort the attacker has to invest. For example, he might have to buy more expensive equipment to find attack vectors. But this is a very tough goal to reach. An easier goal might be to delay his attack, for example by forcing him to spend more time on manual code analysis. By delaying the protection, the window of opportunity to make money is already shortened. Now, some of the protections that we build on and integrate in this project rely on diversity. By using diversity in your protections, you can ensure that different users have different versions. And there will be a limited number, of course. But when an attacker has then found a workaround for a certain combination of protections, he'll only be able to attack a fraction of all end users. As a result, of course, his income goes down. Furthermore, by renewing the protections and by recoding, for example, the assets in an application, you can also shorten the window of opportunity even further. Now, coming back to this picture, to reach any of those goals, you have to combine lots of different protections. And that's why we focus on integration. The I of Aspire stands for integration. And we want to integrate many different techniques. The problem then is that for a user, it's very difficult to efficiently and effectively use the software protection tool flow. He cannot use all protections because then the overhead will grow too big. So he has to make a selection. And so rather than just developing a protection tool flow, we actually want a software protection tool chain that uses compiler techniques to protect code. And then we want to develop a decision support system on top of it to facilitate the use by expert users or maybe even by non-expert users. So concretely, what are our goals? Well, the first goal is to build a reference architecture for mobile services and mobile applications that combines lots of protections. You have a mobile device that you don't trust. You have a server that you can rely on because you control it, and that's trusted. We also have an untrusted network in between. Now for the application and the service, we're going to build an application that consists of a client-side part and a server-side part, and they communicate over a secure channel. We're going to reuse existing cryptographic techniques for that. And then in the client side and on the server side, we're going to combine a bunch of different protections. And we want to build a reference architecture in which all of these protections can be composed and reinforce each other. That's one goal of this project. A second goal is to build a protection toolchain that's based on plugins, with which we can actually generate this split application in the client side and the server side automatically. We're going to start from annotated source code. With annotations in the source code, a user can easily express his security requirements and the protections that he needs. And then we're going to develop a source level protection toolchain that applies a bunch of transformations to deploy different forms of protections. The result is then partially protected source code that we want to send through a standard compiler. This is an important requirement because companies depend on third-party compilers, and out will come object code. Now this code will be sent through a binary level protection toolchain. It's basically link time rewriting of binary code, and with that additional protections will be injected into the application, and some of the protections that have already been initiated at the source level will be finalized at the binary level. And the result will then be an application consisting of the two parts from the reference architecture. Now to use this toolchain, we need decision support. To use such a system, the user will provide some additional input, such as platform descriptions, description of the assets that need to be protected. And then the decision support system will automatically generate toolchain instructions. The system will actually generate the necessary annotations, and it will do that on the basis of a knowledge base that captures a lot of expert knowledge. With respect to this knowledge base, a first goal is to develop attack models and an evaluation methodology that will allow us to assess the strength of different protections and combinations of protections given an application and its assets and their security requirements. In support of that evaluation methodology, one goal is to develop a set of security metrics with which we can quantify the protection strength. Now to validate the knowledge that we put into this knowledge base, we're going to run experiments with human subjects, and that includes both students in the academic partners and professional pen testers in the companies. And another goal is to set up a public challenge. We want the public to attack the protections that we designed. So as you can see, it's clear that Aspire is quite a challenging project if you want to reach all of these goals. Now, having discussed all these goals, it's probably also useful to explain the project title. Aspire stands for Advanced Software Protection, Integration, Research, and Exploitation. Exploitation is very important. A major goal is to validate and demonstrate all of the technology that we develop on real-world use cases. In this project, these use cases are dynamically linked native libraries that are embedded in Android apps where they implement the security-sensitive functionality, and also native libraries that serve as plugins in the Android DRM and media server frameworks. The Aspire project has received funding from the European Union 7th Framework Program under grant number 609734.